Hello. Today I'm going to talk about the use of functions, I suppose this would apply really in any sort of programming language. I know our focus in this class is JavaScript, but this would apply equally well in any programming language. We break up code into functions for several different reasons. One of them is simply the old divide and conquer strategy. It's much easier, instead of writing some big gigantic piece of code, to write and break it down into small pieces and do each little piece at a time and get each piece working, and then make sure then the whole is working. When you do that, you can actually take some shortcuts, if you wish, just to keep the development process moving along. For example, you can write what's called a stub function. A stub function is where if you had a function that was supposed to calculate the price of a pizza, for example, you could have it simply return a value without doing the actual calculation. And in that way you could test the rest of the program while you were still finishing up that piece of it. But again, the one idea, again, the divide and conquer strategy, to take a big problem and break it down into several pieces. The other advantage of functions comes to reusability. With almost every programming language, you can put these functions somewhere. In JavaScript, you can put them in an external file, for example, and then you can use these functions on several different pages. So what makes for a good function? Several characteristics of a good function. First of all, good functions should really just do one thing. All right, the good functions shouldn't try to do three different things. It should just do one thing. All right. Functions should be self-contained, and what I mean by self-contained are this: it shouldn't refer to anything else on the page, with one exception. We'll talk about that exception in a second. For example, getting to our calculate the price of a pizza function. The price of a pizza might depend, for example, on the size of the pizza and the toppings, whether there's pepperoni, extra cheese, mushrooms, and so on and so forth. All those values should be given to the function as arguments or parameters to the function. The function itself that does the calculation shouldn't look on the page to see if a checkbox is checked or anything like that. Anything the function needs should be given to it as an argument. Functions then return a single value, return one value, and it can be one of something, one of anything. All right, it could be, for example, a date, a boolean, a decimal number, a string, anything like that, but it can only return one of. All right, so functions take these parameters. The parameters is what makes the function flexible. For example, you're not going to have one function to calculate the price of a cheese pizza, a different function to calculate a pepperoni pizza, a third to calculate one with pepperoni and mushroom, and so on and so forth. You can easily see how that would get to be pretty complicated fairly quickly. So instead what you do is you have one function that calculates the price of a pizza, takes in all these different parameters, takes in the size of the pizza, whether there's cheese on it, whether there's pepperoni on it, and so on and so forth, and then calculates it and returns the results. Now I mentioned there's one exception to a function not knowing whatever else is going on the page. Of course, there kind of has to be a single boss function that kind of ties everything together. So for example, in this pizza calculation, you might have a function that accepts as an argument the size of the pizza, the different possible toppings, and then returns the value of it. Well, there's going to be something that's going to need to grab the values of the text boxes and the drop downs and so on and so forth and pass them to this function. So there will be a function in your JavaScript that will kind of be the glue between the HTML on the HTML page and the function that has the arguments and returns the results. The more generic you can make a function, the less that it depends on its surroundings, the more self-contained. You know, an engineering term for this is black box, where everything the function needs is given to it and it simply returns the result. If you do that, you have functions that are reusable and can be very effective.